as they say, even a broke clock is right twice a day. Well, Charlie Kirk, that's the same dude who usually capes for the wildest stuff, the most racist of things. He just pushed back on one of Donald Trump's own boys. And woof, it's got people looking a little sideways this week. David Friedman, if you don't know David Friedman, he is an former Trump ambassador to Israel. I debated him, or I interviewed him on Al Jazeera, and it turned into a debate. He was awful. But look on the channel for my conversation with David Friedman. I think it's worth it. But anyway, he got on camera and said that critics of Israel should be deported, that critics of Israel should be jailed, that critics of Israel should have their very lives made miserable. It was a bizarre thing, but sadly from him, not at all surprising. Check this out.
We've cut off hundreds of millions of dollars to the most elite, but at the same time, the most anti-Semitic universities on campus. We have begun deporting illegal aliens who hate Jews and advocate for the destruction of Israel. We have, and this is a bigger point, because when you think about all the people who are in the business of fighting anti-Semitism, there are many, many NGOs, there are many organizations, there are many people who commit their lives to it, and they're all very good people and have enormously good intentions. But a government can do in 2 months more than any organization can do in its lifetime. And so when we talk about the importance of a bipartisan fight against anti-Semitism, which of course I endorse, and I, as my predecessor said, I condemn anti-Semitism on the right and on the left. I'm an equal opportunity condemner of anti-Semitism.
You're alluding to Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, none of them are any good on the right. On the left, I don't like any of these anti-Semites, and I'm not shy about it. But the government, the United States government, or the government of France, or the government of any other country, has the power to rein in anti-Semitism in a much more effective way. And people say, well, the governments are not in the business of changing the way people think. That's true, but to my thinking, most people who are anti-Semites, most of these people running around, we're not going to win their hearts and minds because they don't have hearts and they don't have minds. So how are we gonna? There's no reason to think we're ever going to convince them, but we can deport them, we can put them in jail, we can make their lives miserable, we can cut off their funding, and that's what the Trump administration is doing for the first time.
And
that is wild. Not just that Friedman said it, which isn't that surprising. I mean, he's an extremist. He is, in my experience, not the sharpest thinker, not the deepest thinker. He doesn't have significant knowledge on the subject of Israel, Palestine, excuse me, despite being a former ambassador. But he's an ideologue who will say and do whatever is necessary to achieve his political goals. Not surprising coming from the Trump administration. But anyway, he really said what you heard, that we should punish speech with prison, deporting, fining, all that stuff. But prison, he's saying people should go to prison for being what he calls anti-Semites. Now, I shouldn't have to say this, but it's worth saying. It's always worth saying in this crazy world, anti-Semitism is wrong. Anti-Semitism is disgusting. I have no sympathy for anti-Semites, and they should be held accountable in all the ways that make sense in all the ways that are just and fair for their anti-Semitism. But that's not what he's talking about. He's talking about punishing speech with prison. And we also know that for him, what he calls anti-Semitism is a very wide net that includes just criticizing Israel at all. Now, people were outraged. People were disgusted by what Friedman said, and people spoke out against it, and a lot of them were the usual suspects. But then Charlie Kirk stepped in, and he said, nah, that's not it. Now, I'm not forgetting who Charlie Kirk is. He's disgusting. He's human garbage. There's just ample evidence of him being racist and disgusting in all the ways. But even Charlie Kirk had to step in and remind folks that free speech doesn't come with fine print. He said, we can't toss out the First Amendment every time somebody gets loud on a campus with a protest sign and a keffiyeh. And he's not wrong. And you can see Charlie Kirk tweeted about this. So you can see the whole tweet if you want. I don't want to advertise his page, but but he said you can't get outraged by that. Now, of course, he's saying it because he finds the keffiyeh and the protest sign abhorrent. But he's still saying it can't be illegal. That's how it always goes, right? You say anti-Semitism, you say racism, you say terrorism. You make them the excuse, and the next thing you know, any dissent is illegal. Charlie warned that the same way, quote, everything became racist. Now they're trying to make every critique of Israel into a hate crime. Side note, the everything that Charlie Kirk is talking about probably is racist. Usually the things that he says, oh, we can't say that, we can't call black people monkeys anymore. No, you can't. But he's right to the extent that that logic and language is being used now to defend Israel, to shield Israel from its own critics. And once that door opens, all bets are off. So, yeah, I'm not giving Charlie Kirk a cookie, but credit where it's due. Even he sees the danger. You say, why, Mark, would you use Charlie Kirk? Because it shows you how extreme the moment is. That even Charlie Kirk recognizes that this is disgusting. Even Charlie Kirk is outraged by Trump's actions. And he's sort of catnip to the Charlie Kirks of the world. But even Charlie Kirk can see that this is a problem. Friedman is a problem. This argument is a problem. This approach is a problem. It must be stopped.